guys, it's Marty with DPC Technology. We're back again today with another video, and today's video is going to be about the Garmin Ecosystem. I have a Garmin 945 on my wrist. I do ride a road bike, and I've got a Garmin Edge 530. We'll talk about a little about both those things, but also about the software that both those devices sync to, some of the metrics they talk about. But let's back up for a second and talk about, why we're even talking about this. Obviously, this is a tech channel. All these devices are little techie devices. While there may not be something that you see every day at work, part of the reason I want to talk about this is because you work in the IT industry, you probably sit behind a desk. There are some of us who are out in the field or pull a bunch of cable and things like that, or just from time to time do that. But I bring it up because I know there are a lot of us out there that in our early 20s, maybe we were the weight we wanted to be. And as time crept on, that weight crept up. Some of us, and actually this is my example, I went back to school in my 20s, and those freshmen 15 turned out to be a senior 25. So my journey from there was, when I got out of school, I got on the bike and started riding. From there, like I said, I got into a bunch of metrics, and I got more and more into the Garmin ecosystem. So I just want to talk about that a little bit today and show you some things that it's tracking, some things that even just the general person that's cares a little bit about their health, may find useful. When I first started, I just wanted to lose a little bit of weight, but I was into the techie stuff. And so I will sit there and look at my ride or my run after I'm done, or my swim, and look at all the metrics. Or if you're just one of those, people who aren't trying to do a bunch of fitness stuff, you just want to make sure you get your steps in for the day. You just want to make sure you're getting enough sleep at night. You want to make sure that your resting heart rate is in a good spot. All those metrics also exist. I just want to go through some of them, give you my input on why I care about some of them. I'll go ahead and say that I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a personal trainer, I'm a nobody. Not an athlete, I only try to pretend to be one. Let me just go ahead and go through a couple things and give you some input as to stuff I started paying attention to in the beginning, and then talk about how that journey changed a little bit once I kind of got to my goal weight and goal fitness, and then wanted to go a little further. All right, so we're gonna jump into the Garmin Connect app. Actually, it's the web version of this. There is a Garmin Connect app for the phone, and I will admit I do use it probably more than the web, like when I'm just waking up in the morning and checking stuff, but I will look at the web version as well. So all the same things are there. They may just be organized just a hair different, but kind of just wanted to go through those things. Right here on this first page, this is just the general fitness dashboard. There's a couple little dashboards, and you can organize them however they want. I haven't changed much of this stuff because I get to everything pretty easy, but this first page is just showing me the two devices I have. I have a Forerunner 945, that's what I wear around on my wrist every day, and then I have a Edge 530, which is my bike computer. Just showing these in these two little tiles here, because if I wanted to jump into them and change settings for those particular devices, I could. You'll also notice there's a little calendar tile here. I'll admit, I don't really use the calendar function inside of Garmin because, well, I don't even really remember why I don't use it. I feel like it might have been a little clunky, but if I wanted to schedule a particular ride, run, or workout, or maybe, I actually use Training Peaks. So there's a couple of other apps that will sync with the Garmin community. Training Peaks is one of them. I'll go ahead and just say that Training Peaks is pretty far down the rabbit hole of kind of like, fitness life there. You probably are some level of an athlete if you're using Training Peaks, because Training Peaks is meant to specifically build structured workouts. That's the micro view. So to go more macro, it's also to schedule workouts throughout a week and have them balanced. To go even more macro, it's to have weeks inside of a training block to be slightly progressively overloading if you adhere to the progressive overload model, and then to go even more macro, full macro, if you will. It's that training blocks fit into an entire year. And so kind of here's a quick example, just referring to this base 2 block here. We're up to say this race, this is a race, you see this little A at the top. This is, I think it was roughly a 10 to 12 week training block I did, where you can see that I'm kind of ramping up in volume. This green is the build phase, where you go from a base phase where you're really just increasing volume as a whole, go into a build phase where you are increasing intensity along with that volume. And then a couple weeks out or a week out, whatever it may be, you do some level of a taper just to kind of try to maintain the fitness you have, but let that fatigue fall off and kind of reach peak form before a particular race. That's what Training Peaks is for as a whole. So if you're really going down the rabbit hole and you're trying to train and, I don't know, make a PR on your next 15K, you probably should be using Training Peaks. If you are inside of Garmin and you're trying to schedule things that way, you can, just a little clunkier in my opinion. Now, if you're just a regular human being that just cares about general wellness, you don't need Training Peaks at all. You just need to move. And I say that because, one of the most important things is just getting your steps in. But I'll kind of come back around to that. You see, this activity was actually, I just worked out, a strength workout on my lunch break. There's some other little utilities here, little tiles here that have stuff, but I don't use some of these things, but they're there. For instance, this news feed here, it's people I'm, have friends with in the Garmin community, have their ride, run, whatever it may be, their workouts. Most people aren't doing anything in there, and I say that because they're probably doing that in Strava. So Strava is another one of those third-party sites that will take your Garmin data and, post it in a kind of a Facebooky kind of way, allowing others that you are friends with comment on that ride or just simply give you kudos or basically a thumbs up, right? I actually used Strava a lot when I got started. As I mentioned earlier, when I got out of school, started riding the bike to try to lose some weight. It was very helpful to see, other people out there doing it and to stay motivated that way. It can also, almost be your demise at the end. And by that, I mean, you ramp up, you start doing 30-mile rides every week, and you almost don't even want to look at Strava if today you've decided to take off for whatever reason. But it's good motivation. I don't use Strava as much anymore. Like, I almost don't even pay attention to it. Everything automatically posts. I use Training Peaks a lot because I'm typically working towards something. As right now, this is where we're at right here. So you can see in my life, I have tapered down and I'm just doing some strength stuff right now. Kind of just relaxing. Gonna go into another kind of ramp up period here soon for the sake of trying to get ahead of those holiday calories, if you will. Let me just jump through a couple of these dashboards. The next one is just activity tracking dashboard. So it's got some of the same data there, but this is one that's a little more everyday person, right? So going back, if you're just someone that's looking for general health and wellness, and you're looking at stats that help you stay motivated in that direction, this is probably a little more that dashboard. So here's steps, right? How many steps? So far I've gotten 6,794 steps for the day. The way these goals work, if I'm not mistaken, is it's going to have like a default low goal, and then your trending average, if it's going up and you're beating that goal every day, it will go up to the point where it hits 10,000 and it won't go any more than that. I just say that because I know some of the other fitness trackers out there like Fitbit will have a default goal 10,000 steps a day, and you can change that. This one's a little more interactive, so if you're falling off, you're doing less and less steps, it'll kind of curve that goal down just to get you motivated again. These are just how many floors I've walked today. We live in Florida, so there is not elevation here at all, and we live in a one-story building, so I very rarely get floors in, unfortunately. Here's another metric. This is the intensity minutes. It's just a generalized metric to try to encapsulate any type of activity you've done. I believe the American Heart Association says you should do something like, but I believe it's 150 minutes of exercise per week to stay healthy. And if it's intense exercise, it could be half that. But you can see here, as far as they're concerned, when I say they, it's Garmin, I've done 26 minutes of moderate intensity exercise and 21 minutes of vigorous. And so since the American Heart Association says you should have 150 minutes, moderate minutes, or 75 vigorous, what this does, it takes my vigorous minutes, multiplies by 2, and it gives me my total minutes. I have a weekly goal of 225. So there's just another way to say like, well, maybe I've got my steps, or maybe I can't get my steps in. I don't have the ability, but I can do a structured workout, or I can do any particular thing that's gonna get my heart rate up that may not be steps. This will try to capture that. This one's just my heart rate pain, and if you skim through, a couple things you see is my resting heart rate is 49. Now, I'll go ahead and say that if you are a medical professional, you may say that's not how resting heart rate's measured, and I'm not saying it is. What I mean is this is just simply a metric that says my lowest heart rate all night long was 49 beats per minute. One thing that I'll mention, if you drink alcohol, you should get a tracker and see what your heart rate does with alcohol. If you ever drink alcohol past 4 or 5 p.m., you'll see your heart rate go up, and you'll see it take all night long to fade. And if you ever wonder why you wake up not feeling refreshed after a night of sleep when you've drank, track your heart rate. You'll know exactly why. But skimming on down through here, you see here's a little sleep tile that kind of shows I went to bed super early last night and I was pretty tired this weekend. In general, I'm going for 8 hours of sleep at night. I know that's kind of just an average metric. I typically wake up 5:30 to 5:45 every morning. Typically, I'm going to bed at 9:30ish. Like I said, you can see here that I went to sleep a little early, but if I were to jump into this tile, you'll see that you can kind of get a zoomed in view of what your sleep looked like. I will admit that I don't think Garmin is perfect on this. I think they're doing the best they can. They're using the gyrometer in your watch to see you moving around, checking for movement. They're looking at your actual heart rate, like as I kind of just mentioned there, because this has a heart rate sensor in it. And as between those two things, they're trying to get an idea of, all right, when was deep sleep? When did it start, stop? Light sleep? When did it start, stop? REM? When were you awake? All those types of things. And from there, it's going to give you the total amount of time it thinks that you slept, and it's going to give you some metrics as to the quality of your sleep. So here's sleep score, and here's sleep quality. One thing to mention about this, Garmin has improved upon this quite a bit. When they first started, it was just an amount of sleep and a not as good of a depiction of what that sleep looked like. All right, so one more thing to mention here. I just jumped into my daily summary, which is just, it's kind of another dashboard of all the same stuff, but it's just, very specific stuff. If I skim down, one thing that comes up here that I haven't mentioned yet is calories. Just like any other fitness tracker, you plug in your age, your weight, how much on average you're moving, and it'll give you kind of your base calories that you should be consuming a day, which is based off of your base caloric rate. And one thing that this will do, just like it tying into Strava or ties into Training Peaks, is this will sync with something like MyFitnessPal. So if you're tracking calories, what this will do, this will push workouts to MyFitnessPal, and MyFitnessPal will push the calories that you're noting to this so that you can either look here or look at MyFitnessPal to see what your calorie budget should be for a day. So again, if you were using this for some kind of, like, I'm trying to watch my weight, or I'm trying to cut calories, or I'm trying to just look at my macros, if you would do a workout, that will get pushed to MyFitnessPal. Now, how accurate the depiction of calories burned, take it with a grain of salt, but it will give you that many more calories, depending on how you're doing that. Some people are just trying to hit a particular amount of calories a day. Some people are allowing themselves to eat the additional calories that they've burned. I'm not a nutritionist. There are a couple other little metrics here. Respiration rate, I'll be honest, I almost never look at that. Stress, this is really just based off of heart rate, from everything I can tell, so don't really use it all that much. Body battery, I do like the body battery. Again, this is just an assumption. It's basically just taking your resting heart rate, the amount of sleep that you had, and, well, not just your resting heart rate, your heart rate over the night, and the amount of sleep you had, and your heart rate throughout the day, because if your heart rate's higher than it normally would be, it assumes that it's that way because it's tired, or you're working, or maybe a little bit of both. And it's giving you a body battery number, and this really just kind of tells you what your rest and recovery looks like. Is that what it's supposed to be doing? So if I click in this guy and just look into the throughout the day view, what you'll see is obviously it's going to start out at its highest when you wake up, and then it fades throughout the day. You go and work out, it may fade at a faster rate, as you can kind of see in this area here. But when you go to sleep, it is going to slowly charge up. And it's just a depiction of kind of what your body may be capable of today. So one thing to mention, and there are some other fitness trackers out there that are doing nothing but this. So I believe it's the Oura Ring and the Whoop. Another one is an example of, like, that is all it's doing. Well, I believe that's all it's doing, is tracking your rest and recovery. I rely on a specific training plan that I know has worked in the past for me. I'm guaranteed that I'm not overworking myself. At the same time, it doesn't hurt to kind of keep that stuff in check and kind of look at that. Body battery number is really just everything I just said kind of encapsulated into one. That's what it's supposed to be. But I still like looking at that individual information. So I know I've kind of jumped all over the place here and just tried to show the ecosystem. I'm also aware there are other ecosystems out there. I just name dropped a couple. There's the Oura Ring, there's the Whoop band. I know Polar is a very, very common one out there that's basically replaced everything in Garmin. I started in Garmin because I don't even know if I had the watch first or the bike computer first, but I got one, and so the other one was inevitable. Garmin's been around for a long time, kind of in the GPS world. If you're a hiker, then maybe you'll never get a bike computer, but maybe you have an InReach or an InReach Mini or the GPS tracking devices for the sake of just hiking. It may be beneficial if you're already in that community to stay in that community, and that's kind of where I went. So I don't think there's anything wrong with some of the other competitors out there. To each their own. One thing I'll say is that I just like staying in one community whenever I find something. Garmin has been good to me. I haven't had any really devices do me wrong. So far, I'd give it 2 thumbs up. That kind of covers a lot of the things I really wanted to mention today. I didn't want to try to go too in depth, because if you're a uber fitness nerd, you probably already know a lot of these things. I just wanted to try to kind of give my perspective on fitness-based gadgets. In the IT community, as I mentioned when we started, there are a lot of people that sit behind a desk all day and need to find something that will give them some kind of motivation, whether it's Strava, which you just have a community just telling you're doing a good job, or whether you need Training Peaks to build a very specific plan towards a race that you've signed up for, or you're just a normal human being that just wants to be overall well. You want to do what you can to try to avoid tipping into those scales over whatever number your number may be, and just a way to track it. If you found this at all interesting, please like and subscribe. And if you didn't, also like and subscribe. But if there's something particular you found more interesting, or something maybe you'd like to see me talk about a little more, please feel free to comment. I would love to do more of these videos. I didn't want to go too in depth because I didn't want to scare anyone off. Check down in the description and you will see a link to our blog post on this stuff. If you are looking for anything specific, you might find there. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and see you next time.